One would think that any bank robber, if they had even a shred of intelligence, would at least choose a secluded spot with fewer people to carry out their heist. However, the two greenhorns currently before us did precisely the opposite. They made it a point to rob the banks that were the most bustling and crowded. Don't stand up, open the drawers. Yet behind these seemingly nonsensical actions lay a truly insane plan that no one could have anticipated. Welcome to Kendrick Voices. I'm Kendrick, and today I'm bringing you a criminally underrated Western crime masterpiece, Hell or High Water. Without further ado, let's dive right into the film. The movie commences with a bank employee, a cigarette dangling from her lips as she exits her vehicle. Suddenly, 10 distinct English words flash across the screen. We were in Iraq 3 times, but people like us don't get any help. Though concise, this powerful sentence eloquently exposes the American government's profound disregard for its war veterans. It encapsulates the deep-seated grievances of those abandoned by their time, serving as an incredibly poignant and sharp critique of reality. At this moment, the woman approaches the bank, ready to start her shift just like any other day. However, as she's about to step through the entrance, 2 robbers materialize behind her. When the teller eventually opens the cash drawer, she discovers it is completely empty. You all are new at this, I'm guessing. Where's money? The teller explains that all the funds are secured in the vault, and only the manager possesses the access code. She earnestly warns the 2 robbers to abandon their attempt immediately, cautioning them that continuing would set them on a perilous, irreversible course. To her surprise, one of the robbers immediately seizes her hair, forcing her to kneel down by the doorway. Around 8:30 a.m., the bank manager arrives precisely on schedule for work. The instant he pushes the door open, he finds himself staring down the barrels of 2 handguns. Good morning. The elder brother, Tanner, is visibly exhilarated by how effortlessly their first bank robbery unfolded. However, Toby, the younger sibling, remains burdened with worries. They had no time to rest. They were compelled to rush to the next small town without delay to execute their second robbery. An old cowboy had recently discovered a stash of antique coins buried beneath his family's inherited barn. Just as he was making arrangements to convert these valuable collectibles into cash, the 2 brothers suddenly stormed inside. Open the drawer! Open the motherfucking drawer! Despite their criminal intent, the pair operated with a distinct set of rules. They showed no interest in $100 bills or neatly bundled stacks of money. Their sole target was smaller denominations, loose $5, $10, and $20 bills. They were keenly aware that only these scattered, lower-value notes would make it difficult for law enforcement to find a traceable pattern or lead. Suddenly, Tanner recalled the old cowboy still present behind them. You got a gun on you, old man? Damn right I got a gun on me, old man. Hearing this, Toby quickly moved to frisk him for a weapon. We all going to steal my gun too? I have my own gun. Where you stand from? You mission from the bank? Moreover, the brothers left the old cowboy's ancient coins entirely undisturbed. Yet as they exited the bank with their haul of loose change, the old cowboy still raised his pistol and pulled the trigger. His shots, however, were deliberately imprecise, clearly not aimed to strike them. After all, he was an authentic Western cowboy, and a certain display of bravado was simply expected. Toby then yells, "Put the gun on the counter. He tried to get us killed. See him, some old man. We just robbed one place. That's it. You're turning out to be a poor-ass criminal. Fuck you." Although he nearly took a bullet due to his younger brother's actions, Tanner showed absolutely no anger. And in this world, Toby was the sole family member he had left. To guarantee that nothing would go wrong, the brothers' first action upon reaching their farm was to bury their car in a deep pit they had prepared beforehand. Following this, they switched to another vehicle they had ready and continued their drive towards their next designated town. 2 bank robberies occurred in quick succession that morning. The veteran Texas Ranger, Marcus, instantly became fully alert, rushing to both crime scenes with his partner to initiate an investigation. However, what they subsequently uncovered caused his brow to furrow deeply. Neither of the robbed branches possessed any surveillance cameras, and, without exception, both were divisions of the Texas Midland Bank. The robbers' methods demonstrated an extraordinary level of caution. They only seized loose, small denomination bills from the counters, leaving large bundled banknotes entirely untouched. Furthermore, they deliberately bypassed any bills with traceable serial numbers. The experienced ranger understood implicitly that this was far from an impulsive, reckless act of theft. Rather, it was a meticulously planned and precise operation. At this point, only two facts were firmly established. The culprits were two Caucasian males, speaking with authentic local accents. Despite the sparsity of leads, Marcus drew on his extensive years of experience to form a conclusion. These individuals were almost certainly accumulating money for an urgent need, and it would undoubtedly not be long before they executed another heist. Concurrently, the two brothers were engaged in conversation over a meal at a diner in a small town. Upon learning that his younger brother owed his ex-wife a substantial amount in alimony and had not seen his two children for a considerable time, Tanner promptly proposed they commit another robbery. This, he argued, would enable them to settle all the children's alimony payments in a single transaction. To his surprise, Toby, after hearing this, abruptly uttered a thought-provoking statement. "You know, you talk like we ain't gonna get away with it. I never met nobody got away with anything ever." The brothers found themselves on this irreversible path primarily because of their late mother. Before her passing, she had acquired a bank loan due to her illness, a loan that was, from its inception, a deceptive trap. Where the contract explicitly stated that upon the borrower's death, the bank possessed the right to reclaim the family ranch within a brief time frame. Even more enraging was the recent discovery of oil reserves beneath this very land. If the ranch were to be repossessed, the bank would secure exclusive rights to its oil extraction. Determined to preserve their family farm, the younger brother Toby conceived a desperate scheme. They would rob the bank and then use the stolen funds to repay the bank itself. Despite his elder brother Tanner having been released from a 10-year prison sentence barely 2 days earlier, he nonetheless agreed to the plan without a moment's hesitation after hearing it. "And why the hell did you agree to do it?" "Because you asked, little brother." Having said this, Tanner fabricated an excuse about needing to use the restroom and departed from the diner. In truth, he donned a mask and made a direct dash towards the bank situated across the street. At that very moment, the waitress presented Toby with his bill and offered him a pleasant farewell. Toby glanced down at the check, which indicated a modest sum of only a few dozen dollars, and a moment of indecision flickered within him. From the instant he had stepped into the restaurant, the waitress had maintained a consistently warm and courteous demeanor, exhibiting no trace of dismissiveness. Consequently, he not only covered the full cost of his meal, but also left her a substantial tip. This seemingly minor action profoundly illustrated his intrinsic respect and benevolence towards individuals in humble positions. Yet, he remained utterly unaware that this incidental act of generosity would, at a later point, save his life. Just then, Toby abruptly witnessed his brother frantically exiting the bank across the street. Though Toby recognized that Tanner's actions were intended to help him accumulate alimony, Tanner's rashness still ignited a furious anger within him. Not only had his brother impulsively robbed an untargeted bank, but he had also completely derailed their original strategy of going to a casino to launder the money. What was more troublesome was that the car they were using could no longer be utilized. Left with no alternative, the brothers were forced to retrace their steps, switch vehicles, and recommence their journey. They absolutely had to reach the casino before nightfall, without a single moment of delay. Upon receiving the report, the two rangers immediately deployed to the site. This particular bank, unlike the previously targeted Texas Midland branches, was outfitted with a complete surveillance system. After interviewing the bank teller regarding the specifics of the robbery, Marcus headed straight into the restaurant where the brothers had just dined. However, the old cowboy who had observed them eating lunch there not only failed to tell the truth, but intentionally supplied Marcus with misleading information. He falsely stated that one robber was exceptionally tall, while the other was quite short. Marcus then turned his attention to the waitress, meticulously inquiring about her interactions with the brothers. Astonishingly, her narrative largely aligned with the old cowboy's fabricated account. When Marcus was informed that the waitress had received a $200 tip, he promptly requested to inspect the money. Yet the waitress outright declined his demand. "And bills are evidence." "It's evidence if they're the bank robbers. Until then, it's my tip." I have my mortgage. So you go out there and you get a warrant. You come after the money that I will be using to keep a roof over my daughter's head." Marcus found himself utterly silenced by her sharp response. Before proceeding to the casino, Tanner led his younger brother to a trailer home, claiming he needed to pick up a couple of items. Once Toby unlatched the trunk, Tanner promptly stowed 2 rifles inside. "You only know this. Gun's been in the trailer days on end." Though Toby was bewildered, he refrained from asking any questions. Subsequently, the two arrived at a gas station. After refueling, Toby made his way towards the supermarket to purchase some provisions. However, just as he stepped inside, 2 unruly youths in a sports car pulled up alongside Tanner's vehicle. Misinterpreting Tanner's gaze as a challenge, the young hoodlum, feeling provoked, immediately unleashed a torrent of expletives. The punk spat. "What, bitch? You looking for trouble, motherfucker? You talking to me?" Upon hearing this, the young thug immediately drew the pistol he was carrying, even training the barrel on Tanner. But at that precise moment, after a quick appraisal of the situation, Toby rapidly moved towards the thug's companion. With a clenched fist, he prepared to launch another round of aggressive blows. Unexpectedly, the companion instantly cowered, clutching his head and continuously muttering that the incident was entirely his brother's fault and had nothing to do with him. Tanner displayed no surprise whatsoever at his younger brother's sudden, fierce actions. He knew better than anyone that while Toby might appear mild-mannered, once his boundaries were crossed, he would instantly shed all restraint, transforming into an incredibly ruthless individual. "That's all? Could have killed you. I told you about enemies, little brother. I told you." As evening approached, the brothers at last stepped into an Indian casino located in Oklahoma. While exchanging their cash for chips, Toby expressed concern that the staff might decline the transaction due to the sheer volume of small bills. After much deliberation, he deliberately fabricated a plausible story. "Sorry, I just sold my car. This is how the fella paid me. We'll take it anywhere you bring it, mister." Following this, their plan was simply to gamble for a short while at the casino, then convert their chips into a combination of a check and cash, thereby completely legitimizing their ill-gotten gains. The casino employee asks, "Who would you like the check made out to?" The following day, they drove to a law firm to meet the attorney responsible for executing their mother's will. The lawyer was fully cognizant that the fund's origins were far from legitimate, yet he still agreed to take on their case. "How much you making on this deal?" "Not near as much as I'm risking." "Oh, I'll do it then." Now they loaned the least they could, just enough to keep your mama poor on a guaranteed return. Hey, don't they dare swipe her land for $25,000? Don't it make your teeth hurt? The lawyer not only correctly deduced the illicit source of the money, but also expressed a willingness to maintain their secret. The underlying irony of this situation was impossible to ignore. The attorney then informed the brothers that Texas Midland Bank's deadline for repossessing the land was that very Friday. Consequently, they were obligated to accumulate the entire sum of money by Thursday. Before their departure, the lawyer shared some deeply significant advice with Toby. The trust needs to be managed by a bank, and if you really want to cover your tracks, you get Texas Midland to head this trust. Following this, the two brothers visited a car dealership and acquired a used pickup truck, not particularly powerful, or at an inexpensive price. Tanner, aware that his sister-in-law held no affection for him, transferred the 2 rifles from the sedan to the newly purchased pickup. He then allowed his younger brother to proceed alone, carrying the alimony, to visit his children. Upon seeing the money, his ex-wife mistakenly assumed he had already sold the farm. "Where's the boys?" "Really? It's been put in a trust." "What does that mean?" "Means no one could sell it. Something else I gotta take care of." As the two remained in a strained silence, their elder son entered the room. However, upon seeing his father, the boy merely turned away with a cold demeanor and walked off. Toby hastily pursued him into the backyard, extending a bottle of liquor to his son. Yet the boy accepted it only to set it down on the ground. Toby then softly informed him that his grandmother had passed away several weeks prior. Before her death, she had bequeathed the farm to him and his brother. "What am I supposed to do with a ranch? And if one would sell it, I found all of them." Even brother ain't gonna have to worry about money no more." He then shifted his tone, his voice imbued with profound bitterness. He admitted that both his uncle's life and his own had been failures. He confessed that his uncle had made numerous regrettable choices, and he himself was hardly an improvement. Ultimately, with a voice bordering on entreaty, he cautioned his son never to repeat their errors. Upon their return to the farm, Toby noticed that Tanner had fully loaded all the M4 magazines. Tanner justified this by stating it was for their safety. "I don't want that shit in the car. Actually, I'll be running 2 cars next time, brother. Then ride with me." That afternoon, the 2 men consumed a considerable amount of alcohol, recounting innumerable anecdotes from their childhood. They even engaged in playful roughhousing, much like they had as boys. Ostensibly, they appeared immensely happy, as if time had rewound, transporting them back to those untroubled years. Yet both knew with certainty that those innocent days were irrevocably lost. The following morning, the 2 men departed early. However, upon their arrival at the Texas Midland branch in their intended town, they discovered the bank doors already securely shut. It was clear that the main office had detected something amiss and had preemptively closed this location. Their meticulously laid plans were thus compelled to change, out of forcing them to redirect towards nearby Coleman County. Unexpectedly, mid-journey, Tanner abruptly brought Toby to a halt. He expressed a desire to target a larger branch, one not originally included in their scheme. The bank they were next scheduled to rob, he argued, was simply too small, and the potential haul would be insufficient for their needs. More critically, they were under immense pressure to settle the loan by Thursday. Even the slightest shortfall could completely negate all their previous endeavors. Thus, Tanner proposed they proceed directly to Post City for a substantial heist. Toby realized this represented a significantly more dangerous course of action. Yet Tanner's reasoning struck home with every single word. Time, like an unseen pistol, was chillingly pressed against their backs. Concurrently, and the 2 Rangers had been maintaining a stakeout in Coleman for a full day and a half, yet there was still no sign of the robbers. Left without options, Marcus reluctantly unrolled the Texas map once more to reevaluate the leads. The robbers' initial targets had exclusively been Texas Midland banks. This particular bank operated 6 branches across Texas. Subtracting the 2 that had already been hit, 4 remain. At this juncture, the robbers were likely to strike either the Coleman branch, which they were presently observing, or the Jetton City branch, which had already been closed ahead of time. Given that the Jetton City branch was shut and the culprits had not appeared at the Coleman location, a recalculation suggested that only the larger Post City branch was the most probable next target for their heist. So then let's go. When, as a precautionary measure, they left Toby's car parked on the town's outskirts, and then both proceeded to the bank in a different vehicle. However, the moment their car entered Post City, they noticed the place was bustling. Furthermore, the Texas Midland Bank located there was astonishingly large. Upon seeing this, Toby immediately felt inclined to retreat, but Tanner asserted that they had exhausted all other options. Regardless of the circumstances, they absolutely had to breach this bank. Consequently, Toby steeled his resolve and donned his mask. Yet the instant they stepped through the entrance, both men froze in disbelief. They had never anticipated such a large crowd of people inside. But having come so far, they had no choice but to steel themselves and proceed with the robbery. And after ordering the teller to open the cash drawer, Tanner swiftly began to fill his bag with money. However, the sheer number of people in the bank was overwhelming, and Toby found himself utterly unable to maintain control of the situation. Just as Tanner finished gathering the money and was preparing to make their escape, a bullet suddenly flew towards him. In that critical moment, Tanner was forced to return fire, killing the security guard. Had that cowboy not fallen, it was highly probable that Toby, the younger brother, would have been the one to die. Yet the peril was far from abated. As the 2 men burst out of the bank, they discovered the situation outside to be even more treacherous. Large numbers of armed citizens, as though by some prearranged signal, began firing furiously at them, as they struggled desperately to reach their vehicle. Tanner swiftly ignited the engine, expertly controlling the accelerator with one hand as he reversed the car rapidly. However, the residents had no intention of allowing them to escape. Witnessing the 2 attempting to flee, They promptly clambered into their own vehicles and launched a pursuit. "This is called too far, Tanner. No one's supposed to fucking die. It was our mistake. Take your crap." At this juncture, the two Rangers also received an urgent alert. The Texas Midland branch in Post City had just been robbed by two assailants. "What did they tell you?" "They're in chase." Meanwhile, that zealous group of residents relentlessly continued their pursuit from behind. Then Tanner suddenly realized his younger brother had sustained a gunshot wound. Toby's mental state appeared to be rapidly deteriorating. "Toby, hear me now. Hear me clear. Unless you want to be a black mark on your son's life, I need you. You gotta listen to me. Toby, do you hear me? Go. Go, Toby. You're gonna be okay. Good luck." Confronted by the numerous citizens chasing them, Tanner abruptly swerved the car sideways to the roadside. He then stepped out with extreme composure, immediately retrieving an M4 rifle from the truck bed. Resolutely, he raised the firearm and unleashed a brutal spray of bullets upon the interfering citizens ahead. His desperate and frantic act instantly scared them witless. While these citizens may have wished to act heroically and uphold justice, not a single one was foolish enough to wager their own life. In a matter of moments, the previously relentless pursuers all spun their vehicles around and retreated. However, Tanner understood better than anyone that he had become an unstoppable force, a rolling boulder that no one could halt. There was absolutely no chance for them to escape this situation unscathed. Therefore, as they prepared to switch vehicles, he first passed the recently stolen money to his younger brother. Then, with a deliberate motion, he shut the car door. "Go, get to the casino. Change the money like we planned. You plan the work. Every step of the way, just like you planned. You hear me? Don't be stupid. Love you, Toby. I mean it. I love you too. Fuck yourself. Fuck yourself." Though Tanner wore sunglasses, his emotions were unmistakably evident. The two brothers thus separated, and this farewell was an eternal one, and they would never have the opportunity to reunite. Shortly thereafter, Tanner encountered several pursuing police vehicles at a crossroad. Having anticipated such an event, he exhibited no trace of panic. He promptly executed a sharp turn, guiding his vehicle onto a secluded dirt track. Not long after, Marcus and his partner, hot on his trail, followed suit. The piercing wail of police sirens resonated behind him like a haunting death knell. However, confronting the ever-growing number of law enforcement personnel, Tanner displayed no inclination to retreat. Deep down, he knew this was no longer an escape. Rather, it was a deliberate charge towards an inescapable end. The more pursuers he drew to himself, the greater his younger brother's chances of safety. He intended to convert every passing second of his remaining life into a vital opportunity for Toby to flee. Indeed, he was resolved to offer his own life to forge an escape route for his brother. His first action was to construct a rudimentary bomb from a gasoline can. Next, he retrieved a sniper rifle and leaped out of the vehicle. The police officers behind him were instantly stunned with fear. Realizing they had no time to take cover, they quickly abandoned their cars. Seizing this critical window, Tanner bolted toward the mountainside. He soon located a prime vantage point that afforded both an excellent sniping position and natural rock formations for concealment. At this precise moment, the two Rangers also reached the base of the mountain. Once they had taken cover behind their patrol car, Marcus voiced his bewilderment. "Why is there only one robber on the mountain? There ought to be two." His partner speculated that perhaps the other assailant had already been killed by the vigilant citizens. However, no sooner had the words left his lips than Marcus's partner was shot directly in the head. Marcus's gaze filled with profound shock as he looked at his colleague, now lifeless and no longer breathing. The Native American man, who had just moments ago been engaging in light banter with him, had died right before his very eyes. Just then, the group of well-intentioned citizens approached. Upon seeing them, Marcus immediately gestured for them to retreat. He then haphazardly entered one of the civilian vehicles, instructing the driver to take a circuitous route and drop him off on the mountain directly behind the robber. Only from that vantage point, he reasoned, could they potentially subdue this desperate outlaw. Tanner's frenzied actions had indeed created a window of opportunity for Toby to escape. All the incoming police units, rushing to provide support, had their focus entirely fixated on the sounds of gunfire emanating from the mountain. Patrol cars sped past, brushing by Toby unnoticed. No one anticipated that the other key target was quietly slipping away right under their noses. At this exact moment, Marcus had successfully reached an adjacent hilltop. Below him, Tanner, single-handedly, was still engaging the entire police contingent at the base of the mountain. He remained utterly oblivious to a steadier, colder gun barrel that was silently taking aim from an entirely unexpected and undefended angle. By the time Tanner sensed that something was amiss, it was already too late to alter the trajectory of his fate. Despite having neutralized the robber, Marcus's spirits were immeasurably heavy. His partner lay deceased directly before him, a grim reminder that he would never rise again. That evening, Toby had already exchanged the money stolen earlier that day for casino chips. As he watched the television news report detailing his brother's fatal shooting by a sniper, a sensation akin to a cold blade slowly dissecting his chest spread through him. The agonizing pain surged through his bloodstream, reaching all the way to his fingertips. At this point, he slowly lowered his head, directing his gaze towards the chips that his brother had paid for with his very life. This sum of money represented both the single crucial key to freeing his family from their distress and the devastating price of their fraternal bond being mercilessly severed by destiny. The following day, he appeared at the Texas Midland main branch. There, he settled his mother's outstanding loan, including both the principal and all accrued interest, in its entirety. The instant the manager laid eyes on the check, his expression abruptly shifted. He had never conceived that this impoverished wretch could amass such a sum within such a brief time frame. Despite this bank having a long-standing practice of exploiting the less fortunate, Toby nonetheless adhered to his lawyer's counsel. He entrusted the management of the trust assets to Texas Midland Bank itself, and this particular decision stands as both the most profoundly ironic and exquisitely executed element within the entire film. Sometime later, Marcus had entered retirement. Nevertheless, he found himself back at the police station, meticulously sifting through the closed case files, hoping to uncover some lingering trace or clue. He remained steadfast in his conviction that the other robber involved in the case was Tanner's younger brother, Toby. However, the official investigation findings unequivocally demonstrated that this line of inquiry was entirely fruitless. Toby himself possessed no previous criminal record. His sole court appearance had been for his divorce. He simply did not fit the archetype of an individual who would abruptly resort to robbing banks.